Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shrinuyama Deva Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangai Stushtvagam Sastanubhi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuh Swasti na Indro Vriddhashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemi Swasti no Brihaspati'r dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Swasti is welfare. I think we need a lot of that now all over the world and especially here in USA. So we were studying the 4th chapter of the Mandukya Karika, the Alata Shanti Prakaranam. And here the main theme, at least one of the main themes, is taking up for consideration other philosophies, other points of view and refuting them. We just saw how Gaudapada in verses 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, he has told us about the Advaita position, that we are the Turiya by nature. We are, that is our real nature. He gives the examples of, a yogi who is born with yogic powers because of the sadhana done in past birth. So we are born, it's like a superpower that we have, that you are the Turiya. We are not subject to old age and death and disease. That is the body. We are not subject to frustration and disappointment and ups and downs. That is the mind, and so on. So that is that's our superpower, like the siddhi of the yogi. We are born with that. It's our real nature. Another example he gives is the nature of fire, for example, is heat. In the same way, our real nature is the Turiya, that we are pure consciousness. Then he gives the example of the power of birds to fly. These are examples given by Shankaracharya in the commentary to verse number 9. Gaudapada simply says sahaja, with the natural ability of birds to fly, the happenings in the world of nature, akritrima. Shankaracharya gives the example of water flowing down. So nothing special is needed for that. That is the real nature of things. Just like that. And he comments, Shankara, on this, that all these are still within Maya. But just as natural and as easy and as normal as that, we are the Atman. It is our real nature. Then in the 10th verse he said that all beings, not just enlightened beings, all beings, not just Jivan Muktas or people who have realized Aham Brahmasmi, every being is naturally free of birth and death and old age and disease. He mentions Jara Marana Nirmuktaha. Yes, 10th verse. Naturally, sarve dharma swabhavata. Naturally, what naturally? Just like we saw those examples of natural. Naturally free, all beings are naturally free of old age and death and also disease and so on. Yet we experience ourselves as aging, as sick, as dying. Why? He says, Javante tan manishaya, because we are immersed in this world, in this wrong worldview. I would not only just say worldview, wrong self-view. We are not aware of our real nature. We are not aware of what we are experiencing. That all of it is the Atman. We are the Atman, the Turiya. But we think of ourselves as physical body, the waker, identified with the physical body. So young body, I am young. Healthy, I am healthy. Sick, I am sick. Old, I am old. Body is sick or young or healthy or old. So identified with body mind, we tend to undergo old age, disease, death. It's an appearance, but for all that, of course, an appearance which is very, very real for us. So the Advaita position is, this is due to ignorance. It's not really happening. As against this, there are other philosophies, all of which they say, no, the world is real, the body is real, and birth is real, old age, disease and death, these are the reality of our life, and we have to deal with that. So now Gaudapada has to answer these questions, because Gaudapada's view, ajādvai, that the world did not originate, or in philosophical language, the effect did not originate. Turiya is beyond cause and effect. No effect. Effect means waking, dreaming. Effect means the world. And in Advaita terms, world means waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Cause and effect. But Turiya is beyond cause and effect. Turiya is not the cause. There is really no cause of the world, because the world itself is not really an effect. Ajādvai. As against this, there are other philosophers which he indicated at the beginning of the chapter. They regard cause and effect as real. There is a real cause of the universe, and the universe is a real effect, a product. Universe has been created. In fact, in all the theistic religions, one common thing about God is that God is the creator. And the universe is the created, and we are the created. We, the jivas, are created. This physical universe has been created. And who is the creator? Who is the cause of all of this? Creator is God. Philosophical language, we are the effect, and God is the cause. Cause and effect is real in these philosophies, and they try to justify it. We also saw what Gaudapada does. He refutes them. He has to refute. He has to show that those are not justified approaches. They are not logical. He has to show the faults in those approaches, and that he does in the next few verses. He will take it up. He has indicated in the beginning of the chapter that those philosophies are to be rejected, but in detail, how are they to be rejected? What is the fault in their approach? What are the different approaches? What are the different philosophies, and what is the fault? He will take it up verse by verse now. Basically, his target here is the Sankhya philosopher. Why it is so? Let me just say a few words. There are two major positions here, two major opponents. One is the Nyaya Vaisheshika school. I am taking them together, Nyaya and Vaisheshika together. That's number one opponent. And second is Sankhya, or I can say Sankhya Yoga. Let's just say Sankhya. Sankhya school is the second opponent. What is the issue at stake here? The issue is both of them consider cause and effect to be real. There is a real cause and it produces a real effect, this universe. Gaudapada, of course, rejects that, and he has to show why both are wrong. What is the difference between the two? I'll just mention in brief. I have touched upon this at the beginning of the 4th chapter. The difference between the two is asatkaryavada and satkaryavada. The terms mean this. Kāraṇaṃ means cause. Kāryam means effect. Cause, effect. Now the question is, the effect, did it exist in some form in the cause, or is it new? Let me repeat that. The effect, the thing which is produced, did it exist in the cause, pre-exist in the cause in some form, or is it something novel, something new? So, the plant, did it exist in the seed? The seed is the cause and the plant is the effect. Seed is kāraṇaṃ and plant is kāryam. Did the plant, the kāryam, pre-exist in the effect, or is it something new? If you say no, it did not exist, it's something new, for the first time we are seeing it, then non-pre-existence of the effect in the cause, those who hold this position, they are called asat karyavadin. Karya, effect, asat, not real before production. After production, it's there. So, not real before production. Those who hold this position, who are they? Naiyayikas and Vaisheshikas. Nyaya Vaisheshika. Nyaya is the philosophy of Gautama Muni, and Vaisheshika is the philosophy of Kanada Muni. So, they are the ones who hold this position. Non-pre-existence of the effect in the cause. Asat Karyavada. And their great opponent is the Sat Karyavada, the Sankhya, Yoga philosophy also of Patanjali, and Sankhya philosophy of Kapila. So, what does the Sankhya say? No, the effect pre-exists in the cause. Not that there is an actual plant in the seed. If you open up the seed, will you actually find leaves and branches and fruits? No. But what you will find is in an unmanifest form, the plant is there in the seed. And that's a pretty scientific way of looking at it. Today we know, because of our knowledge of genetics and DNA and all, we know that living beings, they pre-exist. The whole information which has gone to the making of a plant, or even our complex bodies and all, they all pre-existed in our genes, in our DNA. So it's the Sankhyans say that it is the manifestation of an unmanifest effect. What is causation? The cause has the effect already in an unmanifest form. The seed already has the plant in an unmanifest form. What happens then? What is production? What is causation? The cause itself becomes the effect. Cause is transformed into the effect, and not randomly. Already the effect was there. All the information was there in the cause. So it just, the unmanifested effect manifests. That is called causation. Cause becomes effect, transformed into effect. So the seed becomes transformed into the plant. The plant is not absolutely new or different from the seed. So these are the two positions. The first position, Nyaya position, is easily dismissed. Actually not so easily dismissed, but here Gaudapada has not paid much attention to it. There are serious objections against the Nyaya Vaisheshika position. For example, our first objection, we have all read science, would be that see, the law of conservation of matter and energy. So we all learnt in school that no matter is ever really created or destroyed. What Einstein he did was he just showed that matter can be converted. At the most, destruction of matter means it's converted into energy. And so the law of conservation of matter became the law of conservation of matter and energy. At the most, you can convert matter into energy, and energy can again be converted back into matter actually. So the totality remains the same. When you say an effect, non-existing effect is created. The non-existing effect is originated. Then you are saying that that which did not exist at all has come into being. That is a little illogical. That which does not exist, you can say it existed in some other form and then it came in this form. That is logical, but then that would become the Sankhyan theory. So that is why, this is one reason why the Asat Karyavada seems a little illogical, because it violates our idea of that something cannot come out of nothing. Something is transformed into something else. Even when, say, matter is destroyed totally, it becomes energy. Another subtle reason why the Asat Karyavada is a little illogical is, if you look at the language itself, non-existent effect originates. The effect did not exist earlier. Effect did not exist earlier. The plant did not exist in the seed. The curd did not exist in the milk. The pot did not exist in the clay. Non-existent effect originates, or non-existent effect is produced. Look at the end of the sentence. Originates, produced. These are verbs. So the verb must qualify a subject. What is produced? What originates? What is created? So in this case, what is created? Non-existent thing is created. So the subject is non-existent. You see, if you say the man is walking, so walking is a verb. It qualifies what subject? The man. So the walking is a action which is qualifying an existing subject called the man. Man is walking. But if you say nobody is walking, so that means there is no action at all. But there is walking, but there is nobody who is walking. You can never say that. That's silly. Walking is going on, but there is nobody who is walking. How can you say that? But it's the Naiyayikas are saying something like that. Nyaya Vaisheshikas are saying something like that. They are saying that non-existing effect originates. So what is originating? That which does not exist. So this is a subtle point, more grammatical than philosophical, but this is another way. There is a logical objection against the Nyaya Vaisheshika school. But the Sankhya school is powerful. Sankhya school is especially also powerful because Vedanta is very close to Sankhya. In fact, Vedanta just might be seen as the next step after Sankhya. And therefore, both Gaudapada and Shankara, they take great pains to refute, to cut down the Sankhya position, because it's very easy to mix up Vedanta with Sankhya. For example, from clay alone pot is produced. Clay is the cause and pot is the effect. Or from the seed the plant originates. Now, a lot of Vedantic language is like that. That from Brahman itself the world comes. Upanishads speak in this language. About this from the spider, the world originates. Mandukya Upanishad. Yatha varnanabhi shriyate grihnate cha yatha prithivyam oshadhaya sambhavanti yatha satah purushat keshalomani tatha aksharat sambhavati vishwam. Mandukya Upanishad. How does the universe come? The universe comes from the unchangeable reality, Akshara, that means Brahman. How? Just like from a spider the web comes. The spider spins the web from itself and then absorbs it back itself. Just as from the earth the plants originate, the plants sprout from the earth. Just as from a living human body hair emerges. Yatha satah purushat keshalomani. Hair and body and hair, they all originate from the living body. Now it seems like Sankhya, Satkaryavada. What was already there is now becoming manifest. So this has to be clearly distinguished, that Advaita is not even saying this. Advaita Vedanta is making a further distinction here, a more subtle point than the Sankhya. So the Sankhya position is specially selected for refutation. In the next few verses, Gaudapada will take up the Sankhya position. What is the Sankhya position? Satkaryavada. The effect was pre-existing in the cause. The pot was in unmanifest form, it was existing in the clay. The plant was in unmanifest form existing in the seed. Curds, unmanifest form existing in the milk, or ornaments, unmanifest form existing in the gold. And what is production? That which was unmanifest is now manifested. That unmanifest part is now manifested. What is manifestation? It's nothing but the changing of the cause itself into the effect. What happens? A new form comes. It looks new. When milk becomes curd, it looks new. It tastes new. So new properties emerge. A new name is given. Pot, curd, or necklace. It's given. This new name is given to the same substance, but a new appearance, new use is there. New properties are there. So these things are manifested, which were already there. So this is the Sankhyan position, Satkaryavada. Now let us see what Gaudapada says. And remember, what is all this in aid of? What's the point? The point is the central Advaita idea that the universe was never actually produced from Turiya. Turiya is the only reality in this universe, is an appearance. A good example is what Gaudapada gave in the second chapter, dream example. Dream example. See, in the dream, a seed might be there, and from the seed a plant is produced. Milk might be there, and from milk curd is produced. These things might be there in the dream. But the dream as a whole, the entire thing which we are dreaming about, the whole thing is not there at all. It's an imagination in the mind. When we wake up, when we look back at the dream, we say none of that happened. Oh, it was just a dream. Neither the milk became the curd, nothing was there. It's just an appearance. That's what the Advaitin wants to say. I'll make it even more clear. The Advaitin is actually not disputing, it's not disputing that milk becomes curd. The Advaitin is not disputing that from a seed plants are coming out, or human beings are born from the father and mother. No. All causation as it is happening in the world is fully accepted. The Advaitin never says that the milk is real and the curd is an appearance. That's silly. Advaitin never says gold is real and the necklace is an appearance. No. In the world, the whole Sankhyan theory is accepted by Advaita. Let me repeat that. In the world, in day-to-day life, entire Sankhyan Satkaryavada is accepted by Advaita. But what Advaitins object to is, the Sankhyan say this entire universe is a product of the cause. What is cause? Prakriti. According to Sankhyans, Prakriti is the cause, nature. And from that the entire universe has been produced. How? By Satkaryavada. Prakriti is really a cause, universe is really a product, and it pre-existed in Prakriti as an unmanifest form. It is now manifest. Advaita, Vedanta, Gaudapada, Shankara, here they say no. Here we part ways. It is more like the dream, where in the dream all your theories are admitted, Satkaryavada is admitted. But the entirety of the dream, whatever you see in the dream, the world that you see in the dream, the people and the objects and the happenings, and you yourself in the dream, they have not been produced by the dreamer's mind. They are appearances in the dreamer's mind. It's not actually that the dreamer's mind became people and objects and things. No. That's the very nature of a dream. It's an appearance. Like in the movie, if you see the movie, everything is admitted in the story. In the story, there are events, people, laws of nature, laws of science, even Sankhyan laws, Satkaryavada, everything can be admitted inside the movie. But the relationship between the screen and the movie itself, it's not Satkaryavada. It's not that the screen became the hero and the heroine and the villain and the world and people and objects and events. No. The entirety of the movie appears in the screen. It's not a real transformation of the screen into the objects and people and events of the movie. Just like that, Turiya is not transformed into the world. Turiya is not transformed into individual beings like us. You are the Turiyam, you remain the Turiyam. This whole world is an appearance. So Satkaryavada is denied where? Advaita Vedanta denies Satkaryavada between the reality Turiyam and the world and Jivas. Universe and Jivas on one hand, and Turiya, there is no connection of Satkaryavada between them. But inside the universe, Satkaryavada is admitted. Whatever theory, or we can replace it with modern scientific theories, no problem. Advaita has no objection. Whatever theory works for you, you are welcome to it according to Advaita. But only provision is the whole universe as a whole, taken the universe as a whole, the theory does not apply to it. It's an appearance. Or to put it even more briefly, whatever theory works for you, you are welcome to it, Satkaryavada or modern scientific theories. Only thing that we say is the whole thing is false. The whole thing is an appearance. That's what Advaita Vedanta wants to say. As we go into these objections, what are the objections against Satkaryavada? Let me just take a look. Some people have raised questions, hands. So Shashank, can you?
Yes. Ramya?
Yes.
Pranam Swamiji.
Yes.
So I wanted to understand, do the Sankhyans hold Prakriti as responsible? And then if that is the case, then what is the connection between Prakriti and Purusha? So if Sankhyans hold that Prakriti is responsible for the whole world and everything.
Yes. So Sankhyans hold Prakriti responsible for the entire universe. Purusha is us. Each of us, we are a separate pure consciousness. Not one pure consciousness, but each of us is separate Purusha. Purusha here does not mean male or female, it just means being. So each of us is consciousness and separate pure consciousness. The rest of this universe, the external universe, our bodies, minds, they are all products of Prakriti. And they were all pre-existing in Prakriti in an unmanifest form. So what is creation? The projection of the universe from Prakriti, from unmanifest to manifest, from avyakta to vyakta. That is projection. So in Sanskrit actually we don't say creation, we say srishti. So srishti is projection of the universe from Prakriti. And the Purusha, us, as long as we are in this unenlightened state, we go from life to lifetime getting attached to the products of Prakriti. What is the product of Prakriti? Body, mind. So we are attached to one particular mind, and from lifetime to lifetime we keep having different bodies. And this is the story of our life until, this is Sankhya, not Advaita, until we get knowledge. What is knowledge? The difference between Prakriti and Purusha. That I am pure consciousness. This whole world is Prakriti. I am drashta, this is drishya. You will say drashta drishya, it reminds me of Advaita. So entire drashta drishya approach is borrowed from Sankhya. Sankhya is actually the people who have got the what do you call the patent on it. So we have borrowed from them. So you are the witness consciousness, and the entirety of the universe, including the so-called you, the body, the you, the individual being, they are all parts of Prakriti actually. So Prakriti and Purusha together make this universe possible. That's the Sankhyan worldview. Is that what you are asking?
And do they have an equivalent for Maya?
That is Prakriti. See, the Prakriti of Sankhya becomes the Maya of Vedanta. What the Vedanta did was, it took the Purusha, that means pure consciousness, and Prakriti, which is separate. Prakriti is matter, is material, jada, in Sankhya. What Advaita did was, it brought the two together. Instead of saying that there is a separate Prakriti which creates the universe, it says Prakriti is the power of consciousness. So Prakriti is now called Maya. When consciousness is associated with Maya and it is responsible for the creation, let me put this way, creation or projection of the universe, it is called Ishvara. Consciousness associated with Maya, Ishvara. The definitions of God. What is the definition of God in Advaita Vedanta? Maya upahita chaitanya. Consciousness associated with Maya. This Maya is nothing but the Prakriti. How do you know? What is Maya made of? Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. What is Prakriti made of? Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. In Sankhya, Prakriti and Purusha are independent entities. They interact. But Prakriti can exist without Purusha, Purusha can exist without Prakriti. Whereas in Advaita, Purusha or Brahman is the only reality and Maya is dependent on Brahman. Maya is the power of Brahman and also dependent on Brahman. Yeah. Let's leave it at that. Other questions? Other questions?
Hello,
Yes, I can hear you.
this is Girish. I had a question about Sankhya, but also since we're discussing refuting of other philosophies, I'd like to bring up Western philosophies as well, if I may. Clearly, Sankhya is dualist.
Yes.
But my question was about Spinoza.
Yeah.
And sort of the pantheism of Spinoza. Is that dualist? Is I guess what I'm trying to get at is which Western philosophy is closest to non-dual? It seems to me, is Spinoza closest to that?
I would say so. Spinoza, the closest Spinoza gets, as far as I know or understand Spinoza, is closest it gets to Vedanta is to Vishishtadvaita Vedanta, the organic unity of the entire universe. So the divinity expresses itself as this universe. This universe is divine. In a crude way, it would lead to a problem. The problem is that if Brahman becomes this universe, which is what pantheism would like to say, though I actually doubt whether Spinoza was saying something like crude pantheism, that is a little doubtful. His position was a little more sophisticated than that. The problem with pantheism is this: if Brahman has become this universe, if table, chair, body, mind, all of this is Brahman, Brahman, whatever it was, right now what is Brahman? Brahman is what you see around you, just like it is there, table, chair and all. Then what good is it? Two problems. Brahman then becomes affected by every problem of the world: sorrow, suffering, sin, karma. That is one problem. The second problem is linguistic. Why call it Brahman then? Just call it the universe. If God is exactly this universe right now, at this point, at one point he might have been the transcendent divine, but right now, if this is the identity of God, that it is this universe, then just call it a universe. Why call it God? And just let it be a material universe and do science. Why even talk about God and theology and whatnot? Again, Spinoza, as far as I know, had a more sophisticated position than this. And there is a variation to this pantheism which is called panentheism. That is closest to Advaita Vedanta. Panentheism is the divine is expressed as this world, or the divine is reflected in this world. What is the advantage of that? The disadvantages of the world, sin and sorrow and defects and limitations, they do not affect the original, which is the divine. Just that the sun may be reflected in water, but the impurity of the water does not affect the real sun. Similarly, so the world is like a mirror in which the divine is reflected. The advantage is then all the aspects of the divine are present in this reflection, like Advaita Vedanta. That is closest to Advaita Vedanta, still not as sophisticated as the Advaitic position. But I'm glad you asked. Recently, I discovered this Western philosopher, Timothy Sprigg, T.L.S. Sprigg. Let me write the name down in the chat. Let me see. Yes, T.L.S. Sprigg. He was an Oxford educated philosopher, worked in England, I think, by University of Essex. But why he's important is, I was amazed to see that in today's world, just recently, he was there in the late 20th century, and up to the I think he passed away in the 1990s or something, or somewhere close to that. He was working up to the 1980s or early 1990s. A completely committed idealist. I thought in Western philosophy, like this total idealism and Hegelian kind of idealism or Schopenhauer's kind of idealism had gone out of fashion at the end of the 19th century, beginning of 20th century. Probably Bradley was the last one, or T.H. Green was the last one. But no, here is somebody in 1980s or 1990s working in Oxford and in Wessex, writing wonderful books. The Triumph of Absolute Idealism, that's one of his books, a very difficult book. I found it's difficult to get. I got one copy in the New York Public Library. I struggled through one chapter, but I realized it takes a lot of time and energy to understand that book. But what he has done is, he says, if you take up Spinoza, he says especially Spinoza, but also Hegel and Schopenhauer and George Berkeley, subjective idealism, and Kant. So he takes up all of these Western philosophers, German, British, English language and continental philosophers, who are idealistic or have elements of idealism, even Nietzsche to some extent. And he combines them into a system, and he says there is really no way you can refute this. And so anyway, my point was somebody so recent in Western philosophy. So I got one of his books is accessible just if you are interested, 10 Theories of Existence. So I am reading that now. Out of those, I think 10 Theories of Existence, yeah, probably. Out of those theories, one is materialism, and all the rest are idealistic theories. So you can see what he likes. Recently I was talking to, just yesterday, Professor Arindam Chakravarti, who gave the talk in our Vedanta Society, and recently gave a wonderful talk on Kashmiri Shaivism. Were you there in that Kashmiri Shaivism talk? No. So I asked him, because he studied in Oxford, I think. Oxford. He studied, he was taught by Peter Strawson and Michael Dummett. So I asked him that, did you know this gentleman, T.L.S. Sprigg? I am really impressed by his take on idealism. And he was so enthusiastic. He says, yes, this old gentleman, he loved me so much that when I went there first, I stayed at his house. And I said, when I mentioned the name, Professor Chakravarti, excitedly, he said, "Ore Baba, khub Advaita Bhakta. He's a great devotee of Advaita Vedanta." He became very interested in Advaita Vedanta. He asked all questions to Arindam Chakravarti, came to India, met Swami Lokeshwaranji. There's a particular Shiva temple in which he used to go and meditate. So Arindam Chakravarti told me all these things. Anyway, just diversion. Yeah, Spinoza is very close. Taken at face value, closer to Vishishtadvaita. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any other?
Yes. Sudhir?
Yes.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Namaste.
One question that the Sankhya philosophers say that this is Satkaryavad, so the cause existed, the effect existed in the cause before.
In an unmanifest form, yes.
In unmanifest form. So Prakriti created everything. So then who created Prakriti, or how do they deal
And thank you for asking this question, because now we can go back. I can use this question to segue into Gaudapada. So these are some of the objections that Gaudapada will naturally have. Let's go then. Let's go there. Yeah, the other people raising the hand. Let's wait. Let's do a few objections to Satkaryavada. Then we will see where we stand. It is true, there are these objections. Just one point before we go ahead. Remember, these objections which he will have to Satkaryavada, these are not the arguments given by, originally developed by Gaudapada. Actually, these are, you remember Gaudapada's special technique of argumentation was he played off the schools against each other. So, all the arguments against Satkaryavada which we will see now are the arguments developed by the Nyaya Vaisheshikas, Nayayikas and Vaisheshikas against the Sankhyans. Simply he just brings forth those arguments and throws them at the Sankhyans. So, let us see some of those arguments. Remember, Sankhyan position, Prakriti is the cause of this universe. Prakriti is real, universe is real, Prakriti produces this universe. How? The universe pre-existed in Prakriti in an unmanifest form and has now become a manifest form. The Prakriti itself is eternal, unborn, undying. Prakriti goes on forever, eternal Prakriti. And the universe is born and it dies. When it is born, it is said to be produced. Effect, unmanifest effect becomes manifested effect. What is destruction? The manifested effect becomes unmanifested. In the Gita also it says, from avyakta it becomes vyakta, from vyakta to avyakta. That is the whole cycle of the cosmos. So, that is the Sankhyan idea. What does Gaudapada have to say against it? So, these things we have read again and again. In fact, that is why it seems Advaita Vedanta is supporting these views, but no. So, we have to carefully distinguish Advaita Vedanta from this. We read all throughout in Hinduism that Ishvara projects this universe, Srishti, Sthiti, Laya Karta, that is the very definition of Ishvara. And Gaudapada is cutting down all those things. So, here Prakriti is the cause of the universe. Now, what is Gaudapada saying? Let us see verse number 11. kāraṇaṃ yasya vai kāryaṃ, kāraṇaṃ tasya jāyate, jāyamānāṃ kathamajaṃ, bhinnaṃ nityaṃ katham chatat. So, let me read the English. The cause must undergo birth according to one who holds that the cause itself is the effect. How can a thing be birthless that takes birth, and how can it be eternal when it can be subject to disintegration? This is Gambhiranji's translation. What is said here? According to Sankhya, Satkaryavada, cause and effect are the same thing. Cause is transformed into the effect. Milk and curd are the same thing. It is milk alone, that is the substance which becomes curds. Clay and pot are the same thing. It is that lump of clay itself which is transformed into the pot. So, Prakriti itself is transformed into universe. Right or wrong, the Sankhyan has to say yes, that is true. That is what we are trying to say. kāraṇaṃ yasya vai kāryaṃ. Now you understand. kāraṇaṃ means cause and kāryaṃ means effect. Yasya, for those philosophers who, Sankhyans, for those philosophers for whom cause itself is the effect. Cause itself becomes the effect. kāraṇaṃ tasya jāyate. For them, they must admit that the cause itself has been born. Because according to Satkaryavada, what happens? The birth of the effect is just manifestation of the pre-existing effect. The cause itself is transformed into the effect. Now, he says, jāyamānāṃ kathamajaṃ. You are saying, number one, Sankhya says, you Sankhyan, you are saying, number one, Prakriti is eternal, neither born nor dies. Second, you are saying, cause is born and cause dies. That means effect is born and effect dies. The universe is born from Prakriti and universe goes back into Prakriti. That is the death of the universe. And third, you are saying, it is the cause alone which is transformed into the effect. Now, do you see the illogicality of if you put them all together? cause is eternal, Prakriti is eternal, neither born nor dies. Effect is born and it dies, and birth and death of the effect is nothing but the manifestation of the pre-existing effect from the cause and going back to the cause again. That is the birth and death of the effect. And third, you are saying it is the cause alone which becomes the effect. The cause is transformed into the effect. So if cause and effect are the same thing, how can you say cause is unborn and undying and effect is born and dying? Cause unborn, undying is equal to effect born and dying. How can it be both born and unborn? How can it be undying and dying? So he says, jāyamānāṃ kathamajaṃ. That which is born, what is born? Cause is born as the effect. Kathamajaṃ, how is it unborn? And if it is transformed, bhinnaṃ, bhinnaṃ means disintegrated. That means it actually, Prakriti is transformed into universe. There is a change. If there is a change, nityaṃ kathaṃ chatat, how is it eternal? It is certainly subject to birth and death. It comes into being as this universe, is transformed. We are born, Prakriti itself. The unborn Prakriti is born as the body, for example, this body. It is born, it ages, it disease, old age, death. Whose? Your Prakriti itself. You had just said it is unchanging and eternal. How is it possible? So do you see the contradiction? Either you have to say it is subject to change, in which case you cannot say it is changeless and eternal, or you have to say it is changeless and eternal, in which case what will happen is the next verse, it will say, in that case the effect, universe will also become eternal. Universe and Prakriti are the same. If Prakriti is really eternal and universe is same as Prakriti, then universe will also become eternal. They will be, whatever exists will become immortal then, which is a very silly thing to say. All beings, we are obviously subject to birth and death. Verse number 12, just see. Just the opposite defect. What was the first defect? The first defect is your eternal Prakriti, nityaṃ, unborn Prakriti will be subject to birth and death, if it is the same as the changing effect world. The opposite problem will be the changing world, the effect, that will become immortal then, if it is the same as the immortal Prakriti, the unborn Prakriti. Number 12. kāraṇādyadyananyatvamataḥ kāryamajaṃ yadi jāyamānāddhi vai kāryātkāraṇaṃ te kathaṃ dhruvam. Number 12. So let me see the translation. If, this is number 12, according to you the effect, that means the universe, be non-different from the cause, cause means Prakriti, then on that, for that reason, the effect, universe, that too becomes birthless, because Prakriti is birthless. And if that be so, how can your cause be still eternal? How can the cause, the Prakriti, remain eternal? Because it is non-different from the effect. Effect means universe, which is subject to birth. So both ways, either say both are immortal or you say both are changing. But you cannot do that. The whole idea of cause and effect is Prakriti is unchanging and eternal, and the world is changing, is born and it dies. Bodies are born and age and die. You are caught in two irreconcilable things. How does Advaita reconcile them? For Advaita, no problem, because the reality is only Turiya. The unborn Ajam, Turiya, eternal Turiya, can very well serve as the background for the appearance and disappearance of the universe. Appearance and disappearance of the universe does not affect the Turiyam itself. Yeah. So this is kāraṇādyadi ananyatvam. If the effect is same as the kārana, karya is same as the kārana, effect is same as the cause, then the effect will also become ajam, unborn, because you have said that the cause is eternal and your effect and cause are the same. And the second line is exactly repetition of the first fault. Jāyamānāddhi, if a cause is born, then how can you say that the cause remains unchanging? Prakriti remains eternal. Yes. So this is a defect in the Satkaryavada. These are two defects. What are the two defects? One, if you identify Prakriti and the universe, cause and effect, then either the cause will become subject to change, subject to non-eternity, cause will become born and it will die, or the opposite will happen. The effect will become eternal, neither born nor dying. Both of which, that means causality will not work according to Satkaryavada. That's the whole point. Again, let me remind you, Gaudapada's objection is to the ultimate causality. Whole universe is produced from Prakriti, that Gaudapada objects to. He does not object to milk becoming curd or seed becoming plant. There, if you want to apply Satkaryavada, no problem. Clay becoming pot, no problem. You can go ahead. Let me just state the Advaita position. The Advaita position is Brahma Vivarta Prakriti Parinama. Let me repeat. Brahma Vivarta Prakriti Parinama. What does it mean? The whole universe, from Brahman's perspective, whole universe is an appearance. Just as the snake is an appearance in the rope. Not that the rope has actually become a snake. The snake is an appearance in the rope. This appearance is called Vivarta. Once you admit the appearance, it appears. In the appearance, there is Parinama, that is, Satkaryavada is admitted. Okay, I have introduced a number of terms. Let me clarify. The original term Satkaryavada is simple, that the effect is pre-existing somehow in the cause. The plant is pre-existing somehow in the cause, the seed. All right. Now, this cause and effect relationship can be of two types actually here. In Satkaryavada, within Satkaryavada also. Advaita also admits Satkaryavada and Sankhya also admits Satkaryavada. But the Advaitic Satkaryavada is a little different. The two types of Satkaryavada are this. One is the Sankhyan Satkaryavada, which we have been discussing till now. Cause is transformed into the effect. The milk is transformed into the curd. Actual transformation takes place. So, this is called Parinama. Parinama means transformation. Actual transformation. Something is changing. So, Parinamavada. Parinamavada is what? Is one variety of Satkaryavada. But what is the other option? The other option is without any actual change, it appears as the effect. So, rope. Snake is also there in the rope, but only as an appearance. The rope only appears as the snake without actually becoming a snake. The desert only appears as the mirage water without actually becoming water. There is no change in the rope. Looks like snake. Mistake. Illusion. There is no change in the desert. Looks like water. There is no actual change of the mind into anything in the dream. But the entirety of the dream, people and places and objects and events are all produced and experienced. Appearance. That is called Vivarta. Vivarta. So, there are two. One is Parinama, one is Vivarta. Sankhya is Parinamavada. Advaita is Vivartavada. Let me repeat. Sankhya holds that actually Prakriti is transformed into the universe. Advaita holds that Maya, Advaita holds that Brahman is not actually transformed into the universe. Turiya does not become actually waker, dreamer, deep sleeper. Turiya appears as waker and waker's world, dreamer and dreamer's world, and deep sleeper and the potential world of the darkness of deep sleep. When I say universe, what does universe mean in Mandukya? It means waking universe, dream universe, plus the kāraṇa, causal, the potential of the deep sleep. These are appearances. Actually, Turiyam has not become these things. This is called Vivartavada. Advaitins, Vivartavada. Sankhya, Parinamavada. Advaita has a severe objection to Sankhya, Parinamavada at the ultimate level. So, from Brahman, if you say universe has emerged, Brahman has been transformed into the universe. So, that's where Advaita would object to Spinoza. Advaita would object to Spinoza there where Spinoza says God has become this universe. So, Spinoza, he was ostracized and persecuted by Christians and also his own Jewish community. Baruch Spinoza is Jewish. He was in Amsterdam Girishji? Yes, Amsterdam, yeah. So, this is something unacceptable. Again, little side note here. You know why it is unacceptable to Jews or to Christians or even Muslims? Because what theory of causation do they hold? They don't use these terms, but what theory do they hold in our discussion? They hold that earlier theory of the Naiyayikas, asat karyavada, creation out of nothing. God remaining separate from the universe, out of nothing the universe was created. So all the Abrahamic religions hold that. And that is of course simply dismissed as illogical. Spinoza saw this great defect and he said, from where can the universe be produced except from God? Because God is the only thing that exists. So from God only this universe is produced. Then God must have been transformed into the universe. That is the Sankhyan idea. Also Vishishtadvaita idea. Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita, all of them they say this. Advaita does not agree. Advaita says in Brahman universe appears, not that Brahman is transformed into universe. So now this is the meaning of the phrase Brahma vivarta prakriti parinama or Maya parinama. You can use the word Maya parinama. Brahma vivarta Maya parinama. What is this universe? Appearance in Brahman, Brahma vivarta, and transformation of Maya. Maya is transformed into the universe, but Maya is not ultimately real. So there is no real, ultimately real universe. We may use all these complicated terms, but just about every villager in India says these things. When they say sab Maya hai, this is exactly what it means. What we are saying here. Okay.
There are questions in chat.
Questions in chat. All right. Let me do one more objection. Verse number 13. Objection to Sankhya. I have given two objections. One more, third objection to Sankhya, to the Parinamavad of Sankhya or Satkaryavad of Sankhya. This objection is a little technical. Let me quickly go through it. Verse number 13. This is a further objection to Sankhya. And remember, all these objections were developed by the opponents of the Sankhya, the Nyaya Vaisheshikas. Verse number 13. Ajādvai jāyate yasya dṛṣṭāntastasya nāsti vai jātācca jāyamānasya vyavasthā prasajyate. Let us see the translation. Gambhiranji's translation. The disputant has certainly no supporting illustration who holds that the effect is produced out of an unborn cause. If the produced effect is held to be born out of another born thing, that too leads to no solution. Okay, that might sound very mystifying, but it's not actually. It requires a little background. According to the Sankhyans, Prakriti, the source of this universe, is inferred. You might ask, how do the Sankhyans know that Prakriti is the source of the universe? They say they have an inference. They logically reason it out. Now, inference, here Gaudapada will attack the inference of the Sankhya. See, inference in Indian logic is of this form. I haven't mentioned it earlier also, let me repeat. Inference is of this form. Parvato vanniman dhumat yatra yatra dhuma tatra tatra vanni yatha mahanase. So, what does it mean? Inference is always based on observed data. So, all our scientific work is based on inference. Lot of our research in social sciences everywhere is based on inference. Even our common day-to-day activities are also based on inference. What does it mean? The example is this, classic example. There is fire on the hill because I see smoke. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire, just like I saw in the kitchen. Now, what does this mean? You see, there are certain cases where we get knowledge by seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, we get this knowledge directly by our sense organs. That's one kind of knowledge called pratyaksha. But a lot of knowledge which we have, like in science, on many things in day-to-day life also, we do not actually see it or hear it, but based upon what we see and hear, we make an inference. we reason it out. In Western logic, Aristotelian logic, this is the classic example is all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Now whether Socrates is mortal you did not check, but you know that all men are mortal. You know that Socrates is a man. Now you put these two together, you can infer that Socrates is also mortal. In Indian logic, this logic is developed by Nyaya, so Nyaya school. It is the same kind of inference, but you notice one slight difference. In the Greek logic, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, and therefore Socrates is mortal. Done. In Indian logic, if you put it in these terms, wherever there is smoke, there is fire. There is smoke on the hilltop, so there is fire on the hilltop. This would be the form. But one additional thing is added in the Indian anumana, in Indian inference. Anumana means inference. One additional element is there, that is called udaharana. Udaharana means example. So when you give any reasoning in Nyaya logic or Indian logic, you have to give an example. You say, from a distance you see smoke and you infer there is fire on that hill, there is smoke on the hill, so there must be fire there. How do you know? You have not seen the fire. How do you know? Why? You have to ask the reason. Hetu. What is the reason? The reason is wherever there is smoke, there is fire. How do you know that? Because I have seen it earlier. The two I have seen together. This is very vital. Smoke and fire I have seen together earlier. Where? In the kitchen. I have seen both smoke and fire together in the kitchen. And so I know wherever there is smoke, there is fire. Now I am seeing only smoke. And therefore I sent the fire trucks there. There is smoke coming out. 5th Avenue. I don't know if there is, but right now it may be there because of the rioting. Now the fire truck will rush there because somebody is burning something, and so the fire truck has to rush there. Now fire brigade did not see the fire, they saw only the smoke. By smoke they inferred fire. Why? Because they know that smoke and fire are connected. This connection of smoke and fire is called vyapti. Vyapti is a technical term, very big term in Nyaya philosophy. Books and books have been written because you can see whole inference, it turns on this vyapti, this connection. If you can establish logically, if you can establish beyond doubt smoke and fire are connected, then by seeing one you can infer the other. If there is smoke, there will be fire, not the opposite. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire, just as in the kitchen. So this part is, if it's more or less clear, let me see what is the objection that Gaudapada has to the Sankhyans. The Sankhyans, they say that they infer the existence of Prakriti. Why? They give certain reasons. Now Gaudapada says, from the cause and effect that we see in the world, you cannot infer a cause which is not also an effect. All the causes that we see in the world are also effects. Seed is the cause of the plant. Seed is the cause, plant is the effect. But seed also is an effect. Seed is produced by the earlier plant, and you can say the seed itself is an effect of the earth element, Prithvi Tattva. So seed also is an effect of something else, and that earth element is also an effect. Ultimately, Sankhyans go back to the first cause, Prakriti, which is not an effect of anything. From that all the effects have come. Everything has been produced by Prakriti. Prakriti is the original cause. And remember, we are talking about Sankhya, but the same logic is later used by all the theistic philosophies, which say God is the first cause. In Christianity, in Islam, in Judaism, Vaishnavism, Shaktaism, God is the first cause. What is the cause of God? No cause of God. God is causeless cause. God is the first cause. God has no further cause. And children keep on asking, who made the universe? Who made the world? God made the world. Who made God? So there the philosophers stop. God, or in the case of Sankhya, Prakriti is the first cause. There is no cause of Prakriti. Now, Gaudapada objects here, or at least it's a Nyaya Vaisheshika objection which he brings forth here. He says, whatever we have observed, all the cases of cause and effect, all the causes themselves also have been effects. they have also been produced. See, anything that you show, whether it's milk and curd or clay and pot, everything, even the cause, clay or the milk, is also an effect. It has its own cause. And that cause has its own cause. We have never ever found a causeless cause, a cause which is only a cause and not an effect itself. Every cause that we have found is an effect. You see, where did this body come from? It's an effect from my father and mother. But father and mother are also not only cause of this body, but they are also effects of their father and mother. Every seed, we say it's a cause, but the seed is also an effect of the earlier tree, and that's an effect of the earlier seed, and so on. So we have never actually come across any example of a causeless cause, of a first cause. Now you see what is the objection. You see, if you try to make an inference about Prakriti, there must be a first cause. What problem will you land up? He says, 13th verse, dṛṣṭāntastasya nāsti vai. You will not be able to find an example. What is this problem of example? In Indian logic, an example has to be provided. You cannot only give this vyapti. You have to give an example. Where did you see such a thing? Smoke and fire are connected. Where did you see? In the kitchen, in the stove, in the match. When I light a matchstick, the smoke and a fire. In the incense stick, smoke and fire is there. So I know the connection of smoke and fire. I can give you many examples. Just like that, this case also is true. But in this case of Prakriti, what example can you give? There is no dṛṣṭānta. No example is there. So Gaudapada says, dṛṣṭāntastasya nāsti vai. For those who argue that from an unborn cause, causeless cause, the entire universe is produced, from Prakriti, the entire universe is produced, you cannot give an example in this world of experience. Now if the Sankhyans say, all right, I will admit then, let Prakriti also be produced. Let Prakriti also be it has its own cause. It is produced by some Maha-Prakriti or Maha-Kāraṇ or something like that. Then the same question will be there. That Maha-Prakriti or that original Prakriti, which is before your Prakriti, what is the cause of that? Is that without cause or with cause? Then it will lead to what is called regressus ad infinitum. In Sanskrit, it is anavastha dosha, infinite regress. I hope I am making sense. I am having fun at your expense maybe. So, you cannot infer the creation of the universe, anumana, inference cannot be done because there is no example of a causeless cause, and in the syllogism, the inferential structure, you must provide an example. If you say that, all right, I give up the position that Prakriti is causeless. Suppose Prakriti also has a cause. It will lead to infinite regress then. In both ways, you cannot prove that Prakriti is a cause. Remember, from Gaudapada, in Gaudapada's mind, the idea is that Brahman or Turiam is not a cause at all. So, any theory of causation, he will find a fault with it. Okay, up to this. So, these are the defects in the Sankhya position. Let me see the questions quickly. Sashank?
So you're looking at the chat, Manoj? So
let me look at the chat.
Yes. So the question is, how does science dispute this? Because everything in science starts only with Big Bang, of which they do not know the origin of.
Yes. So there is this book I mentioned once. Why does the world exist? What's the name of the? Jim Holt. Yes, Jim Holt's book. Very entertainingly written, very nice. So there he goes to different physicists, cosmologists, philosophers also, mathematicians, computer scientists, and theologians, cosmologists like Roger Penrose and others. And he asked this question, how does this universe come into existence? Why does this universe exist at all? So you will be amazed to see, if you now know this Satkaryavada of Sankhya, you will be amazed to see more or less everything is a variety of Satkaryavada, that it is produced from some pre-existing cause that transforms itself into the universe. So everything can be traced back, for example, to the Big Bang. So that's more than one chapter is there about that. But why did the Big Bang itself happen? So there, I don't understand this. Abhijit will understand much more than me. Quantum tunneling what quantum vacuum or something that he talks about, where these particles, they say it's teeming with virtual particles. They are not actually existent, they are possibilities, and they pop in and out of existence for infinitesimal periods of time, flashes, and in this popping in and out of existence, one of those things becomes somehow the Big Bang. So I'm making a mess out of it, but now, when this was first proposed, a Christian theologian said, see, this is our creation out of nothing. Nothing was there, from that Big Bang came. So Nayayikas would have been excited. Asat Karyavada, from non-existent effect comes into being this existent effect. Asat Karyavada. But when I read that, my first feeling was that space, the quantum probability space, what they are calling it, a quantum tunneling effect, whatever they are calling it, that's not nothing. That's not absolute nothing. Even if you say it's a space of mathematical probabilities with almost non-existent particles flashing into and out of existence in infinitesimal periods of time, even then that's really not nothing. That's a lot of mathematics there to describe nothing. So it is from something that something has come. How do you trace that back? You can't. There is no way. One of the chapters is it from bit. So from information, it means physical objects, and bit means from information only. So from computer science. So from information, the whole universe may have come. What that means, I don't know. It from bit. One example he gives is the whole of mathematics can come from 0. See, 0 is just 0, nothing. But plus 1 and minus 1 is still 0. You can get, if you get the entire series of negative integers and entire series of positive integers, it's still 0 together. But now you have positive integers and negative integers. You can do a lot of mathematics with that. A lot of things become possible, although the sum total is still 0. So that's one example he gives. Very interesting book though. This last semester at Harvard, we had a very interesting talk by Brian Greene. He's a well-known cosmologist. You know, he has got this PBS series also, Elegant Universe, The Fabric of the Cosmos. He has written a new book, The End of Time, I think. Yeah. So for the book launch, he came to Harvard and he gave a talk. And it was amazing that just for a book launch, the entire hall was packed, several hundred people. And he's a fantastic teacher. He's a professor in Columbia here. Within a few minutes, he just summarized the basic arguments of his book. This is sort of the culmination of his thinking about cosmology. Same question. How did the universe originate and what's beyond or before the Big Bang? So, you're thinking, what did he say? I can't summarize. I'm not. Though I did get the book, but the interesting thing is in the book, he talks about Vedanta. His brother became a monk, an ISKCON monk, and he said he used to have interesting discussions with his brother. And one of the questions in the Q&A was this: what do you think about these ancient ideas in the Vedas about the creation of the universe? Of course, nobody actually mentioned Satkaryavada, Asatkaryavada, but anyway. So he said, I don't think those are scientific theories, but they are like poetic equivalents. He said that. He said it's like a poetic echo of our present scientific thinking. And he said, I once asked the Dalai Lama, Brian Greene, he asked the Dalai Lama, do you think Buddhism, so Dalai Lama Buddhism, do you think Buddhism can say something about the universe, about cosmology? And the Dalai Lama thought for a moment and he said to Brian Greene that I think as far as consciousness and mind are concerned, Buddhism has a lot to say. But as far as the external world is concerned, we shall look to you and your colleagues for answers. Yeah. I don't know if I answered that at all. Oh, one more point. Jim Holt. The real reason why I brought up Jim Holt is this. In Jim Holt's book, towards the end, I was just thinking, does he ever bring up Advaita? He does. He went to meet Nozick. Robert Nozick was a very well-known philosopher of mind in USA who passed away a few years ago. talking about how does the world originate and consciousness originate and all that. And Robert Nozick told him about Advaita Vedanta. So he has just one paragraph, that perhaps the ancient Hindus were right after all. After dismissing all the theories in mathematics, cosmology and all of that philosophy, finally says perhaps the ancient Hindus were right that the universe is just an appearance in Brahman, and then he says, but that's too crazy, and then he moves on. So he does not consider that seriously. Back to again cosmology. Okay. Quickly. 3 people have raised their hand.
Yes, Puranji.
So, Swamiji, in this theory, in this world of appearance, we are untouched by the objects of the world.
Yes.
So, seemingly, it looks closer to the Buddhist philosophy where they also reject the objects of the world.
Correct. And that's why Gaudapada has often been accused of being a Buddhist. Even Shankaracharya is accused of being a Prachanna Bauddha, a crypto-Buddhist, a Buddhist in disguise. Yeah, so there is a whole school of Buddhism which regards the world of objects as being in the mind, Vijnanavada. But Advaita Vedanta is different from Vijnanavada. Gaudapada will reject that theory also. It will come. But yes, it's in the same direction. The Buddhists have the same direction as Gaudapada. In fact, towards the end of the discussion with Brian Greene, the thing became pretty crazy. Somebody, he himself raised the topic of, is this universe we are living in, is it a dream? So one theory is, of course, it's a theory that Elon Musk himself supports. It's a paper by a mathematician philosopher long ago, actually, several years ago, where the idea is that the concept of virtual universes, like you create on a computer game in a computer. Now imagine there is a civilization advanced enough where they have very powerful computers, and they can really create a very realistic universe. That means simulate it in the computer. It will feel very real. It will look, everything will look very real, very detailed. Now, if you consider it's basically a statistical approach. If you consider the number of planets in the universe, it's quite possible that many of them have life. And if you consider that if many have life, some of them would be very advanced and far advanced. It requires just one very advanced civilization where there will be many such computers. Then they show in probability that the probability that virtual universe, it is much more probable than an actual universe. Brian Greene joked that it takes a lot of work actually to build an actual universe, whereas virtual universe is pretty easy. So now this universe we are existing in, is this a virtual universe simulated in the computer of some advanced civilization? Maybe a child in some advanced civilization is playing a computer game just before lunch, and we are all part of that game only, played by a little kid in some alien planet. What is the probability that this universe is virtual versus the probability that this universe we are living in is actual? So the probability that the universe will be virtual is much more than the probability that this is an actual universe. There is an actual universe, but of all the universes which are experienced, it's much more probable that you're living in a virtual universe than in an actual universe. So we are all existing until that alien kid's mother calls him for lunch, him, her, it, and moment he switches off the computer, we are all gone then. So, and he says, and Elon Musk says that I believe that we are living in a virtual universe. It's not a real universe we are living in. I wonder how different is that from Gaudapada or the Buddhist philosophers. Then next, who is there?
Rekha Kalekar.
Yes, Rekha ji. Rekha ji, are you muted?
So Gaudapada being a little unfair because
you are unmanifest now.
Oh. But can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. You are a voice without form. Swami Vivekananda said that I may give up this body, but I shall remain a voice without form. Now you have become manifest. So you have, like from Satkaryavada, from unmanifest you have become manifest. Yes.
No, I mean, isn't Gaudapada being a little unfair to the Sankhya philosophy? Because even in Advaita, we have Maya, which causeless cause of, everything in a sense.
Yes.
So, how come he supports naturally Maya, but he criticizes Sankhya?
Yes. There is a vital difference between the Maya of Advaita and the Prakriti of Sankhya. The Prakriti of Sankhya is supposed to be real. The Maya of Advaita is not real. So, neither Maya is real nor are its products real. So, if you ask, how can the mind become a building, a sky and a earth and a million people and so many events? The answer is no. It does not become a buildings and lakes and skies and people. It only dreams of those things. A mind is perfectly capable of projecting them and dreaming it within itself, but it cannot change itself into a material object. That's what we call a dream. That's an example. Maya is like that. Maya actually is not transformed into a universe. Then all those objections against Satkaryavada will come into force against Maya. But we do not claim Maya is transformed into a universe. The universe is the dream of Ishvara. Then who is there?
There's a question from an iPad.
Yes.
Yes, Swamiji, just two very small questions. You have been talking a lot about these different philosophers and the scientists, including this virtual universe concept. They also mention different dimensions, that we are kind of living in a three-dimensional world.
Four-dimensional actually, if you take time into account.
Four-dimensional if you take time. And can we kind of connect, or is there any thought in these philosophies, in these Vedantic philosophies about these other dimensions? And my other question was related to time, which was that isn't that a causeless cause or a causeless effect, time itself?
Yeah. Now, first of all, about these other dimensions, getting in touch with dimensions and all. In fact, we are living in a multidimensional world, not only 4 dimensions. The 4 dimensions are what we are conscious of. We are able to interact in 4 dimensions. But if you just take up any standard book on mathematical physics, even Brian Greene was talking about some 23 dimensions predicted by mathematics. They are actually supposed to be tiny at the quantum level. He gave a wonderful graphics to show that, but they are right here. We are not aware of it, and there is no way we can manipulate those dimensions. Just as we walk, in 3 dimensions, and we live through time, a 4th dimension. But those dimensions are also right here. They are the constituents of the reality which we inhabit. Anyway, that's physics. I'm not going into that. What would Advaita say about it? Advaita would say all of that is within the realm of Maya. It's within the realm of appearance. It's not real. It's not an actual transformation of reality into that multidimensional multiverse which physics talks about. The multidimensional multiverse which physics talks about is fully admitted, but like a simulation, like a virtuality. The reality Advaita will insist is the Turiya. Yeah.
And about time also, Swami.
Oh, about time. See, the question is very subtle. You see, what will happen is Advaita Vedanta says that Maya is the cause. When we talk about cause and effect, Maya is the cause. Ultimately, it's not Brahman is not the cause of anything. But at the level of cause and effect, Maya is the cause of the entire universe. But what is Maya? According to Advaita Vedanta, Maya is time, space, causation. Causation itself is a constituent of Maya. Time is a constituent of Maya, and space is a constituent of Maya. So this entire universe is like a playground in which all these events are happening, and the playground here is made of time, space and causation. So time is part of the fabric of Maya. It is the same, it is coextensive with causation. You cannot ask for a cause of time. Time and cause, they come together. They rise and fall together. Example, our own phenomenological experience. Notice, when we experience space, we also experience time, we also experience causation. Right now, for example. When you do not experience space, time, causation, it is at the same time in deep sleep. Every day at night, when we do not have any discrete experience of objects, events, there is no space, no time, no causation. Time, space, causation, according to Advaita, they rise and fall at the same time, and they are not real. Even when they appear, they are not real. Reality is only turiya. Yes. Few more comments are there?
There's one more question from Girish ji.
Hello. Sorry, one more question. Going back to the issue of comparison, refuting of other philosophies, Western philosophy, the concepts of God's love and God's grace as being in favor, being favored by God, are fundamental in various Western philosophies, Christianity, for example. But it seems to me that they don't really apply in Advaita, because Nirguna Brahman is, indifferent, basically, to man's morality or machinations. So the issue of...
All right, I understand. I have three things to say about that. First, I was just thinking about this. I have been given one paper to take a look at, somebody written by a student of philosophy in one of the leading universities here. So this student, he is Muslim. I looked at some work done at Harvard on Advaita. Now, what strikes me is when Westerners or people trained in Western thought come to Advaita, they bring their Christian or Islamic or Judeo-Islamic baggage with them. See, the problem with Western thought is if you push it further back, what you find behind it is basically Christianity or Judeo-Christian thought. From an Advaitic perspective, that's a theistic framework. And the problem, the problem with that is there is nothing, they do not have anything to contrast it with. For an Indian, you understand the theistic framework very well. God, the creator, universe, devotion, love, surrender, grace, all of that language you understand. What is, at least whether you believe in it or not, you understand what they are trying to say. But you have got something to contrast it with also, because you have got Buddhism and Jainism and say Sankhya, which are non-theistic. They are spiritual, they are philosophical, but entirely non-theistic. You can conceive of this world and a satisfactory explanation without God entering the equation at all. Now, what happens is when a Western thinker, even if the person is not a believing Christian or a Muslim or something like that, or Jewish, if they are trained in Western thought, the basic theistic paradigm I can see that it's still there. The ghost of God is still there, even for an atheist in the West. So when they come to Advaita, I've seen it so much, it's an unconscious urge to somehow reduce it to a theistic pattern. That somehow their devotion must enter into it, grace must enter into it, somehow Nirguna Brahman has to be reduced into Saguna Brahman. Somehow the Saguna Brahman concept is more sophisticated than the Nirguna Brahman concept, which is not at all so. It all comes from the tendency of not being able to understand anything more than a theistic pattern, which is why Buddhism is so intriguing for a Western mind. How can there be a religion without God at all? So this is one point I wanted to make. Second point is that what about grace and love and devotion in Advaita? Does it make sense? Yes, it does. Remember, Advaita can be understood at two levels. At the absolute, which is Turiya or Nirguna Brahman alone, and your only relation with that is Aham Brahmasmi, you are that absolute. Or at the Vyavaharika, transactional level. The moment you talk about God, love, grace, morality, all is at the transactional level. At that level, does Advaita Vedanta accept God and grace? Of course it does. Look at the texts of Advaita Vedanta. Look at the hymns of Shankaracharya. Any standard text of Advaita Vedanta will give an explanation of Ishvara, Jiva and Jagat. The moment you bring Jagat, universe, into the equation, moment you bring us as sentient beings into the equation, God is also brought in automatically. So once Advaitic sadhu in Uttarakhand, he was joking that Shankaracharya had to face these questions when he interpreted the Upanishads in the non-dualistic framework like this, and he, Gaudapada's philosophy actually became popular through Shankara. So immediate reaction from other Hindus was, are these fellows Buddhists? First reaction, these Advaitins. He was saying in Hindi कि ये लोग तीर्थ यात्रा करते हैं या गंगा स्नान करते हैं, मंदिर में जाते हैं कि नहीं? But do they go to temples? Do they go to tirthas, observe Shraddha, go to the holy dip in the Ganga? And Shankara's answer was, हाँ बाबा हम सब करते हैं. All of that we do. It is fully accepted. In what sense? In exactly the same sense you accept it. It is holy, it is good for us, transformative, it brings the grace of Ishvara. Ishvara exists. Except just one point, which need not concern you dualists at all. But one point from an Advaitic perspective is, the whole thing is vyavaharika, transactional, which is a politically correct name for false, mithya. So that is the second thing I wanted to say. Third thing, so at that transactional level, all of dualistic religion is admitted. Just as we just saw, Satkaryavada is fully admitted at the level of clay becoming pot or milk becoming curd. There Advaitin will not insist that milk is appearing as curd or clay is appearing as pot. No. If you want to say clay has been transformed into a pot, good, go ahead. We have no objection there. But whole of universe is a transformation of Prakriti or of Turiya. No. That is what Advaita Vedanta objects to. The third point I want to say, is Nirguna Brahman neutral regarding our morality? It seems to be. Just what you said now, Swami, that all of morality and ethics, if it is at the transactional level, vyavaharika, and Brahman is nirguna, paramarthika, there seems to be no connect. But remember, the transactional level and the vyavaharika, vyavaharika and paramarthika, absolute level, are not disconnected. The transactional level is on the foundation of the absolute. The transactional level, the rope and the snake are not disconnected. The snake is an appearance in the rope. The rope can exist without the snake, but the snake cannot exist without the rope. The snake appears with the help of the rope. It's a misperception of the rope. Similarly, this universe, including ethics, morality, religion, love, God, grace, all of this depends on Nirguna Brahman. Without Nirguna Brahman, none of this would be possible. What does this mean for ethics? Actually, Swami Vivekananda, our Swami Bhajananji has a wonderful paper, Ontological Ethics of Swami Vivekananda, where he shows the only justification for ethics is Advaitic. Only justification for ethics is Advaitic. It is this oneness of all existence, that the difference is apparent, false. The reality is this one Turiyan or Brahman. That is the reality. From there only you can derive ethics. The Brahman is existence. From there, in Sanskrit also, the word satyam, truth, comes from sat, pure being. Love, it comes from the ananda, the bliss aspect of Brahman. Verity, integrity of knowledge, it comes from the chit aspect of Brahman. So, all of morality you can derive from the nature of absolute reality. Yeah. In fact, though I don't know how this is relevant, I was privileged to attend a course on ethics taught by Professor Amartya Sen at Harvard last fall. So it's interesting how there is a great struggle to find a foundation for ethics. The whole idea in Western ethics is you cannot derive an ought from an is. What one ought to do cannot be derived from the reality of this world. So that's why science and ethics are divorced. If you have a scientific theory that does not tell you about what is good and bad, how you should behave or should not behave, that it's still up to you. Whereas Advaita Vedanta gives you what is called an ontological basis for ethics. The reality is this way, and therefore you behave in this way. I mean, practically what does that mean? We say, how do you understand ethics? So practically what Advaita Vedanta would say, whatever takes you Godward, whatever takes you towards enlightenment is ethical. Whatever takes you away from enlightenment, from God, is unethical. Of course, to work it out in detail would require so many things. Anyway, that was a very interesting class. So he has his own views. I mean, one professor was saying that, see, would you say, isn't Professor Amartya Sen is very learned in Indian philosophy also? He is. But what I found was, his learning is basically the learning of an Oxford Don, an 19th century British Indologist looking at Indian culture and heritage from a distance. It's not that he means badly. I mean, I had a few discussions with him also. But if you talk to him personally, you immediately get the impression of a Oxbridge gentleman, very courteous. I mean, when I went to meet him at this age, it's very difficult for him to stand and move around. He immediately got up, shook hands, and we sat and talked for a while. But his whole objection is of a Cambridge ethicist. I mean, somebody from a 1960s or 70s Oxford Cambridge school of ethics. From that what you call ordinary language philosophy. That's how he analyzes it. So an example would be, he mentions Bhagavad Gita, for example, in the class. He said, see, in the first chapter of the Gita, Arjuna, in the class in Harvard, he mentioned, Arjuna had so many objections to the war. And Krishna, of course, dismissed them and taught the Gita, and finally Arjuna had to fight the war. But if you go through to the end of the Mahabharata, you will see what Arjuna said was right. So I support Arjuna, Amartya Sen was saying. He was right, and that the war is very bad and this will be the result, and that was the result. But that's missing the entire point of the Gita. The point of the Gita is to attain enlightenment, which is something, of course, Professor Sen does not believe in. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Are there any more?
There's one more question.
Yes.
Yeah, Pranam Swamiji.
Yes, another unmanifest form.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, you don't have to become manifest.
Okay. So, I think before coming to Vedanta, I mean, it's, many years back I read Tao Te Ching. It's one of the Chinese.
Yes, it's a classic.
Books.
Absolutely.
And at that point when I read it, I did not understand what book was saying. But now, I was revisiting it some time back, and I found that the way that they refer in Tao Te Ching, it is very similar to the ultimate reality that the Vedanta talks about. Is that true?
It is true.
Are they
it is
pointing
true.
To the same thing?
It is true, no doubt. Only thing is, in Tao Te Ching, you will not find this kind of a philosophical, logical structure, foundation. What you find here, it is argued out, and step by step you are taken to it and shown this. And possible objections to it also are dealt with. Whereas the Tao Te Ching is very intuitive. It's poetic, intuitive, mystical. It tells you about the same reality, but it just points it out to you, and in sort of enigmatic language sometimes, which you are supposed to grasp. Yes, but it's definitely very profound. I don't have any serious study of it, but to what extent I have seen. In fact, at the Harvard Philosophy Department in Emerson Hall, I met this scholar from China. He's come from Beijing, Chao Zheng. He is very interested in Vedanta, and he's doing a comparative study of Taoism and Advaita Vedanta. So that's what he was working on, and he's so interested. He has translated Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga, and was published in Mandarin in China this year. So yeah, there is a. It's just, I feel it's the same truth. Yeah. All right. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
On that note, let me do the Shanti Mantra. We have gone over time again as usual. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Take care. May the Lord bless all of you, and be safe. Be safe. Yes. Take care.